Out of all early game roles, jungling is probably one of the most difficult to execute. As a jungler, you have many responsibilities which include farming, securing your green buff, controlling river buffs, ganking, warding, and rotating to cover lanes. A jungler truly must capitalize on micromanagement with these extensive lists of duties to fulfill. Any good jungler must have good map awareness, just as any other good player must have, but as a jungler, knowing when to gank and to rotate at key moments is always emphasized through your map awareness. In this video, we're going to cover the first couple minutes of the early game through the eyes of a jungler. After all, the first couple minutes are the most important to win jungler and the most difficult in order to secure early game picks and gain early momentum for your team and yourself. We're going to take a minor glimpse of whether your jungler needs a Siphon for sustain or if it's more efficient to run early game power. We're going to cover early game warding through the strategy of implementing dummy wards into our decks. We're going to run a quick and easy jungle route that allows you to secure your green buff and river buffs as soon as they spawn, along with deciding which abilities to unlock along the way. Afterwards, I'm going to explain how to rotate and gank into mid lane and an off lane. Then finally, I'm going to explain the continuing route after these initial plays and the mindset you need to keep in mind as a jungler. So before we hop into a game, let's get familiar with two crucial cards you'll need as a jungler. First, let's evaluate whether you'll need a Siphon or a Scythe. This depends on your hero and on whether your hero has some sort of sustainability to stay alive in the jungle. For example, Rampage has a King of the Jungle passive which gives him extra health regen in the jungle, Chimera has his Spirit Regeneration passive which gives him health regen stacks per hit, and Quang has Gift of the Heavens which gives him lifesteal to sustain. However, most junglers like Grux, Aurora, Kallari, Scythes, Sevrog, Greystone, and Feng Mao don't have any abilities that gives them sustain. For these guys, I recommend running a Siphon. A Siphon gives you plus 8 HP per basic attack on jungle minions and only on jungle minions, not lane minions. In turn, unlock your first ability that will help you clear camps faster. For example, for Grux, your first ability will be Double Pain. For Crunch, it would be Left Crunch. For Feng Mao, it would be Hamstring. For Sevrog, it would be Siphon. Kallari's would be Shadow Walk. Aurora would be Hoarfrost. Greystone would be Make Way. And for Scythes, it would be Chasite. I recommend fully upgrading Siphons that give you options for power or kinetic through 1-point upgrades to clear camps faster. If your Siphon doesn't give you these options, I recommend slotting it without any upgrades and just use it as a sustain card. Upgrades such as lifesteal, crit chance, health regen, mana, and mana regen aren't as effective early game for junglers and don't help you clear camps faster. The best Siphon out there right now is Sage's Siphon. This is a universal card and it gives you the option for power and you can use it for any hero. As for heroes with built-in sustain, unlock their sustain ability first and get yourself a Scythe or early power card in order to clear camps faster. A Scythe grants you plus 15 extra damage to jungle minions and only jungle minions, not lane minions. However, if you have access to the Fury Affinity like Rampage and Chimera do, then your first card should be a Madstone Gem with 1-point upgrades. This will give you plus 18 extra power, which is more than plus 15 power from a Scythe, and in turn buffs your abilities as well, doing extra damage to lane minions and heroes, not just jungle minions like a Scythe would. Finally, your second card is going to be a Shadow Ward without any upgrades in it. This is going to be what we call your dummy ward. At the start of the game, slot your dummy ward. Be careful not to slot your actual wards with upgrades in it. In the deck store, your dummy ward won't show any upgrades on the bottom of your card. That is your dummy ward. It will always be in the same place every time you start a game. Rush over and place down your Shadow Ward close by the enemy green buff / river buff area in mid lane. Run back to a safer position and recall to base. As soon as you recall to base, discard your dummy ward and slot your starting cards like your Siphon, Scythes, or an early game card. Dummy wards will give your mid laner extra vision, preventing early game ganks. If your ward is closer to the enemy's green buff, your mid laner might also be able to snag a free kill if the enemy jungler is low HP when doing green buff. In addition, your dummy ward will detect the enemy jungler if he rotates to secure a river buff at the 3-minute mark, and will allow you to have an advantage to make a play for a pick or warn your mid laner that the enemy jungler has contested the river buff and avoid them from getting picked off. Now that we've discussed which cards to use and your first abilities to unlock, let's discuss the first route you will take as a jungler, which revolve around clearing camps, the green buff, the river buff, then transitioning into your first two rotations including mid lane and off lane. After placing your dummy ward and unlocking your first ability, head over to the strong side of your jungle and you will begin at the middle camp. Kite around the minions in a circular motion, focusing one minion at a time, but close enough to spread cleave damage to the other minions. As soon as the minions start to get low HP, start edging your way towards the green buff. Doing this will greatly reduce the damage you take by minions, opposed to just standing still and hitting minions. Without kiting minions, you will not be able to run this route. Over time, you'll get better at doing this. After the middle camp, go to the green buff. Repeat the same process, however this time try to focus on the big green buff minion. After that, you will unlock your second ability. Most junglers have some sort of crowd control or gap closer to assist them when they gank. So for your second ability, unlock an ability that will help you when you gank. For example, AURORA would be Glacial Charge, Crunch would be Forward Crunch, Fang Mao would be Reaping Dash, Greystone would be Assault the Gates, Grux would be Smash and Grab, Kalari would be Crippling Dagger, Chimera would be Ambush, Quang would be Judgment of the Heavens, Rampage would be Boulder Throw, and Sevarog would be Subjugate. After green buff, head to the inner camp. Repeat the same process, then finally head to the outer camp and kill the minions with your green buff. Lastly, if you had a good run, you'll be able to head back to the middle camp where you started and snag one more minion. By the time you've done your last camp, the 3-minute mark should be close and you'll be able to make your way to the river buff. On your way, make sure to ping attack river buffs to let your mid laner know to get the other river buff. After completing the initial jungle route, it is time to rotate, a key role any jungler must execute. After securing the river buff by mid lane, evaluate the situation. Is the enemy mid laner in a bad position for you to attempt a safe pick? Is your mid laner low mana or low HP? Is the enemy jungler rotating to a lane? Asking yourself these questions will answer and decide most of your concerns. If the enemy mid laner is overextended, attempt a gank. If your mid laner needs to recall, temporarily cover their lane. If you know the enemy jungler contested the river buff, then play accordingly and cautiously. You want to avoid dying in the early game, for death will hinder your jungle route. You want to avoid dying for a kill when you can, so never get too aggressive and get punished for chasing kills. A bad habit junglers have is rotating to a lane and pushing your mid laners or off laners lane. You want to avoid disrupting your laner's control over the lane. Your laner doesn't need any help managing a lane. They should be able to handle minions by themselves. You're a jungler and should focus on rotating and ganking. Your mid laner or off laner is in full control of keeping the minions where they want to keep them, whether they are trying to keep them close to the tower to farm or trying to push the lane. As a jungler, you intentionally hitting minions will disrupt your mid laner's lane control, so avoid the habit of hitting minions when you rotate. Although the main objective of any jungler is to execute successful ganks for kills, the most important about these rotations is relieving pressure for your mid laner for them to recall to base and equip extra cards. In addition, maintaining your presence on the map through rotations into lane will warn enemy laners that you are aware of their positioning and send a message that you will punish them for overextending and playing aggressively. This will discourage enemy laners from bullying your mid laner. If they choose to continue overextending, punish them through a gank, hence why you need good map awareness. After rotating mid lane, make sure you have enough HP to now rotate to off lane. If you took substantial amount of damage after getting a pick from a gank, recall to base, spend the couple points you have, and head over to off lane right away. Repeat the same process, evaluate the situation. You can also check the cards the enemy carry and support have equipped. The most important is to check if they have a ward. If they have a ward, they will most likely see you coming and relieve pressure when you rotate into lane. If they don't have a ward, you can attempt to play a little more aggressively and attempt a gank. However, always try to ping to your offlaner as you're heading over to left lane, so they can possibly save some abilities to help you when you gank to the offlane. If you choose to attempt a gank, always target the enemy with the lowest HP, if there's a major difference between both of them. Killing the support or carry will hinder both of them from farming. Without the support, the carry will be more reluctant to farm. Without the carry, the support will be able to handle the lane and make the tower vulnerable for a siege. However, if there's no major HP difference, target the carry. They will be easier to kill, and hindering the carry from farming will give your team a big advantage. After rotating into offlane, clear the offlane camps in your weak side of the jungle. By this time, you should have 3 or more CXP to spend if you haven't recalled to base during your route. Finally, you will head back to the strong side of your jungle and repeat the same route. After your initial route has come to an end, your following routes will get more sporadic and unpredictable as the game develops into the mid game. You will be rotating a lot more often and will often find yourself stopping in the middle of jungle clears to rotate into lane, or positioning yourself for closer to allies for potential teamfights. You are not a robotic jungle clear program. This is merely a guideline to assist you as a jungler. Always be aware of enemies' positions on the map, and always keep in mind that potential picks and kills are always more valuable than clearing a jungle camp. The hardest part of being a jungler is knowing the balance between farming and rotating. Too many unsuccessful rotations and you will find yourself falling back in farm. Too much time farming and a lack of rotations will squander potential opportunities to get picks, encourage enemies to play aggressively since you have no map presence, and hinder your allies from sieging objectives. As the game further progresses into the late game into the team fighting phase, your jungle role will diminish and you will be utilized more as a frontline fighter or bruiser. It's encouraged that your carry be fed to jungle camps during the late game, since the carry is a crucial component of your team during the late game. However, being a frontline fighter is another role that usually manifests itself from junglers and may be another future video. Yet these two are just mere guidelines. Perfecting the balancing act is something I can't really teach you. This comes with experience and many other random factors that play into a specific game. Practice makes perfect. Any good junglers have a lot of practice. All in all, junglers have a big impact in the early game through setting the tide of battle through crucial rotations and early picks. Jungling is probably one of the hardest roles to take on, but the most rewarding. I hope you found this video helpful through my experience of playing as a jungler. If you did find the video helpful, please like and subscribe, as it helps me tremendously as a smaller channel here in the Paragon community and encourages me to make more guides like this one. Anyways, it's your boy RapTRz, and I'll see you on Paragon.